Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the difference between good and bad reports. This is really important to make sure that you are writing stellar reports and never having to rewrite reports if you don't have enough information or if information is inaccurate or if there's any other number of issues. We don't want you to have to do that because that's wasteful to your time and we want to value that. And so hopefully by giving you some different tips and tricks today, it'll help you write stellar reports which are going to look awesome and be super helpful to us. So to jump things off, the first thing that you should note is it's very important when writing reports to remain unbiased. What this means is you're driving your narrative based on facts as opposed to opinions, assumptions about people, other things like that. So a couple examples, a resident opened the door in a quick motion and loudly asked what R.A. James Brown wanted after he knocked. Or room 106 East is a fire hazard due to trash being left on the ground. Biased related narratives may look a little different. So it might be the extremely aggressive resident asked what R.A. James Brown wanted as she violently threw open the door, or the resident in 106 East is too dirty and lazy to take his trash out of the room, which has caused a fire hazard. This a lot of times leads to confusion and inaccuracy. You may be frustrated in the situation, and we get that, but we want to be careful because we don't want necessarily your frustration to bleed over into the decision, because we want this to be a fair process for everyone. And plus, students sometimes get to read these reports, and we don't want that to ever come back on you and look bad for you if you're writing a report out of anger when really you just need some time to kind of cool off and take a step away. And so, leaving out those extra adjectives that really put on your view of the student isn't helpful. Versus if you can get quotes, if a student is extremely aggressive and tells you to, get out and is cussing at you, include those. Like if you can include in direct quotes, and we'll talk about that a little bit later here, that's super helpful for us. So the next piece is making sure your report has a good amount of detail or an appropriate amount of detail. Having too much, too little can get really confusing, but having just the right amount is really helpful for us who are reading this report after you and may never be involved in the situation other than the follow-up. So an example of this is on Friday, October 6th at 3 p.m., R.A. James Brown found 4 students smoking an e-cigarette in the WAD's third floor green kitchenette. The people involved were residents Sarah Green, Alex Orange, Ryan Gray, and Bobby Blue. Sarah Green claimed the e-cigarette was hers. This gives us when it happens, where it happens, what time it happens, who's involved, who the RA is, and who took responsibility. Obviously you may have more happens in the incident, but these are a lot of the key basics. Versus if you flip to this, you can have way too much detail at times, which can make it really hard and confusing. And if you're spending all night writing a 10-page narrative and beautiful story about, finding students with an e-cigarette that takes 10 minutes, that's too much, and that's wasting your time, and it's not helpful for anyone. So, an example of that might be a resident James Brown, or R.A. James Brown came around the corner and saw 4 residents standing huddled in a semicircle on the left side of the WAD's third floor green kitchenette. There were 2 male and 2 female residents. One of the male residents was wearing a hat with a Giants logo, and the other had a tank top on with the Colts logo. The girls were both blonde. One of the guys was redhead, the other one was brunette. And they were smoking an e-cigarette which smelled like cherry. There's so much in here that I don't need if I was following up on this. I don't care what the e-cigarette smells like. I also don't care which sport teams these guys have on their shirts. That's a lot of detail that just really isn't needed, and it's going to take up a lot of your time and really just kind of distract away from the real issue, which if you notice, there's no actual final statement in this of who took responsibility or if they were all smoking or what. Having too little can also be problematic. I saw some students standing in a corner passing something around. What does that mean? Even if you told me in person that they were smoking an e-cigarette and I have this would make the follow-up conversation really difficult because I wouldn't have a lot to be able to go off of in having a conversation with these students. So the other piece is you never want to use opinions. You want to have it be factual. So examples are Alex Orange threw the water bottle at Ryan Green versus I think Alex Orange threw the water bottle at Ryan Green. Because if I'm Alex Orange and I'm getting called into an office to meet with someone, and when I read the report, have the report read to me, I hear that I think, I'd be like, no, that wasn't me. And it makes it a lot more hard to have a conversation about that because there's no factual statement that really helps solidify who did what in a situation. And so even if it's, a lot of times it's how your writing style, you really want to make sure you're being concise and making clear statements of what happened in the situation as you're writing reports. Never use guesswork. This is really important because it can lead to students being accurately charged for violations. So for example, a truth, or like I guess like an actual like factual statement, there were 13 cans of Rolling Rock beer in a pile under the bed, versus there's a pile of probably 27 beer cans way back under the bed, because with that other one, I don't even know if they're beer cans. They could be, some sort of ginger ale or something like that, especially if you didn't confirm what type of beer they were, how many cans there were. There's a lot of different ways that students can get around that if they choose to, or it just makes it really hard for me to have a follow-up conversation as a professional staff. So you want to make sure you're using fact statements again. Making sure you have a complete narrative is super important. Sometimes you're the first and only responder to situations, and so it's really important to include from start to finish. I think especially with situations where there might be an injury, talking about what happened that led up to that situation, all the way till public safety or EMS gets there to take over from you. An example of this, R.A. James Brown was approached by resident Sally Silver on Monday, July 2nd, 2018 at 2 p.m. Resident Silver informed R.A. Brown that resident Sarah Green was feeling sick. R.A. Brown approached resident Green at 2:15 p.m. and asked how she was feeling. Resident Green said that she had the flu. Resident Green informed R.A. Brown that she'd been to the health clinic and was cleared to go back to class once she'd gone 24 hours without a fever. R.A. Brown thanked Resident Green for the information provided his contact information and some different resources around campus in case Resident Green needed anything. This gives us everything that happened in the situation. Maybe this is like a 30-minute conversation with the student, but you cut out all the, kind of filler bits, and you really have the important stuff that's in there. It's also super important to make sure you are remaining professional in this, even when situations get heated. We touched on this a little bit earlier. Students can a lot of times read these, they can always read these if they choose to, and you really don't want to look unprofessional, especially because there are many other professionals at the university who will read these for some of the bigger incidents and situations. So an example of a situation, Resident Alex Green screamed and insulted R.A. James Brown when R.A. Brown was documenting the situation. The report should read something like this. When R.A. James Brown explained he needed to document the situation, resident Alex Orange yelled, "I hate you, and I never want to see you again." This includes the actual things that Alex Orange said, and remains calm, collected, and gives an exact representation of the situation, which is always important. Make sure you're being careful with the grammar. I know some of these reports can come in late at night. You can be tired. You can have a lot of other things going. Please make sure you go back and grammar check. Obviously, this one below is pretty far out there in terms of grammar, but you know what? I've seen some of these issues come through before, and so making sure you're being consistent with your spacing, your capitalization, using the right form of night. Using the correct numbers. So instead of doing 8 p.m. with the word 8 and then p.m., making sure it's written in the proper way, making sure you have spaces, make sure you're not writing like you're texting basically if you text in a way similar to this. Including quotes is huge. This really helps, especially for the situations where you may be like, "Ooh, this student wasn't very nice to me," which I use this as an example a lot, but that's not always going to be the case. So maybe it's someone got hurt, and so using those exact quotes and saying this is what I was doing before I got hurt can be really helpful for us for knowing exactly what the situation was. So an example of this is resident Ryan Gray accused resident Sally Silver of stealing food from his fridge. Resident Silver said, "Nah, I stole food from you last week, but when I looked today, all your food sucked, so I threw most of it out." This literally is resident Sally Silver taking responsibility for the situation and really helps us as we follow up with it. So a good report has a full description of the involved persons. We need to know that way, we're not holding half the group accountable and the other half not, or, we're not getting support for half the group, but not the other half. We need to know who all is involved. So if there's the involved people are residents Alex Orange, resident Sally Silver, Bobby Blue, and Sarah Green. You can say something along the lines of R.A. James Brown walked by WADS 153 West and heard residents Alex Orange and Sally Silver and Sarah Green arguing loudly. Resident Bobby Blue reported the disturbance to R.A. Brown. This way, we're not including Bobby Blue in the residents we're documenting, and it may just be the other three for a noise violation or help from follow-up mediation and stuff. Big thing to avoid is just be careful with the pronouns. You really want to spell out who's talking at all times. Using unspecific pronouns can get really confusing if you have reports with a lot of people in it. And so, for example, an example of how this can be confusing is Joe said it was her alcohol. He also said his friend was staying over and had brought alcohol. Um, he was visiting from out of town and was staying with her. Towards the end of that, at the beginning, it kind of makes sense who Joe is, especially as you see his again. But you lose track of some of the other players and who's alcohol and who's visiting and who's staying with her and stuff like that. Who's her? We don't really know who her is. So making sure you're being careful with some of those. Make sure that you are always finishing your reports. That's super important. It's easy to just kind of like trail off, especially if you stop writing when public safety arrives. And that's important because we don't want to overlap with their reports that they'll submit. And so you do want to make sure that you note that they take over the situation. Otherwise, it may just look like you stopped, either handle it yourself or you just stopped writing your report before you were done. So an example of how you can finish this off is R.A. James Brown smelled marijuana from WADS 153 West, called professional staff, and DPSPS. If you also want to include that they came and they took over the situation,